Minnesota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
On this edition of Minnesota Original, Kristen Lowe tells stories with shared pictorials in charcoal and film. Michael Birawer captures iconic subjects and memorable places in his three-dimensional paintings. And Mason Jennings performs at the Hollywood Theater in Northeast Minneapolis.
Drifting out of sight over Jackson Square.
These artists and more, now on Minnesota Original.
There's a humility in drawing that, I hate to say it like that, but charcoal's made of burnt sticks, and it's something that anyone can buy, and it is capable of producing any human emotion in the right hands. I mean, I like to say, you know you're a draftsperson when you could draw a teacup and you could make someone cry, or you could draw a teacup and make someone laugh. It's the way, it's not the subject matter, it's the way in which the artist draws it that has the impact.
The first time that I painted it was just something that was actually so difficult that it just grabbed me right away because I couldn't do it.
And they look horrified, like, well, you can't say that. Isn't it a matter of taste and opinion? That's actually, no, it's not. There are reasons why certain paintings are better than others.
If I'm making something that I think is good, but nobody else seems to think it's good, well, where am I then? Where's the work? How do I go forward?
If you're in the studio doing drawings, you're autonomous, and then you take film and it's so collaborative, but yet it's in the same vein running through it. Both have one thing that is very much in common, and that is stopping and looking at the world around you. Taking time to actually let it come to you, let it sit with it in this kind of quiet space where you have no agenda, but you're just experiencing what's around you. I started the sheep series about 10 years ago. I was teaching a comparative anatomy course. There was this giant herd of sheep. And the way that they interacted with the students and the way they interacted with me was just striking, and it just caught me. They stare back at us with such intensity that it makes you feel like you're caught in something almost. When I started to work, I realized that the scale of the sheep to the scale of the drawing, there was something wrong. And I couldn't really figure it out for a while, but then all of a sudden I realized I had been sketching sketchbook size, about like that, and photograph size, about like that. And all of a sudden I realized that's not how I'm seeing this, that's not how I'm experiencing this space. And the space I'm experiencing is these small sheep in this large world. And so it became very clear that I had to really push the idea of negative space. So the space that is unoccupied by anything, the sky, the background, however someone wants to read it, had to be pushed as far as it could be pushed. And there was this kind of minimalism that then all of a sudden clicked. And the more space that I had, the more negative shape above the sheep intensified the gesture of the sheep. The drawing paper is white to start out with. In the parts of the drawing that look like it's on black paper, it's not black paper, it's actually layers and layers of charcoal where I'm trying to work abstractly to get a kind of breathing, just to give it a different kind of presence that I don't think you could ever really get if I was working, say, on black paper. And then I bring in a lot of white pastel, erase away, add, it's just back and forth additive and subtractive until I start to see something. And one thing I discovered as a kind of shock and surprise is that they started to get this very high contrast sometimes that made them slightly eerie. And I didn't intend for that to happen, but when I saw it in relationship to everything else, it also contributed to this ambiguity. I'm pulled by my romantic side, which is that the sheep are so symbolic and significant in this other way of all the sort of cultural and religious symbolism behind the sheep. And then there's this intellectual side, which says we have these sheep looking back at us, and then we're watching the sheep being sheared. You don't know if the sheep are being herd or, you know, like the drawing, they loved each other deeply. He's reaching around and, you know, it looks like he's like hugging the sheep. You get a little bit closer and you see there's a blade about to go right in the belly. And it's really subtle, which was critical, but it also is, no, he's shearing the sheep, but then you go to these other places and the viewer starts to become the collaborator in that sense that you made the work, but they're filling out the meaning more. And so there is this collaboration between the maker and the viewer.
Maybe it's a simple thing. It's just that you don't recognize what a landscape's revealing to you at first. So you decide to paint it. But a good painting does reveal its secret slowly.
Painting the Place Between is a 1-hour feature documentary profiling 4 contemporary painters that live in Minnesota. They're working from one subject that I feel is, it's critical what they're working from because it's the thing that we all have in common. How our emotional calendars in Minnesota are tied to our land.
So I use a mirror. I can see the landscape upside down. And as soon as I do that, the space is activated. The space is very dramatic. The sweep going back to the horizon is becomes very graphic. You see it, which leads me to believe that we do see that anyway when I'm looking at it the right way up. It's just that we've created a habit, or we've created a way of not really experiencing it.
The film, even though there's parts of it that are very quick, it is about getting into that place of their work and about how they actually really take large blocks of time to participate in that experience of looking at the world around them.
The idea of working from the same landscape over a period of time. I don't mean 6 hours, I mean 6 years. That's where you get to a point where you feel like you can say something through the language.
This is my version of a storyboard. It's not a typical storyboard that would be really linear, but it does talk about the treatment of the film. I made this after I had about 25–30% of the footage. And because I, again, like drawing, I sort of needed to get into it. And then I take this chunk of stuff and I needed to figure out what was my treatment really going to be? How was this going to be handled? How did I want it to visually look? And so that's when I started to, you know, say, I want to see these faces. I want to see the work. I want to see the studio, work being made in progress, different seasons. The language that I'm using for the storyboards and the language that I'm using for the film, I really do feel is very similar to what I'm using in the drawing. In terms of knowing scale, thinking about rhythm, composition, pathways, curiosity, the way the eye travels through the image. And so both pictorial logics, they're kind of sisters to each other.
Oftentimes, the scale ends up growing as I'm sort of starting out with this small little sketch or drawing on a napkin. And then it just becomes like, it starts unraveling into something much, much bigger. And that is kind of what has happened with this piece. It sort of got away from me, and then I had to sort of lasso it back in. It's a massive 10-foot 3D painting, which is actually built in 4 sections. So there's a front section right here, and then there's a middle and two sides, and they interweave in together, sort of lock in together. It's interactive in the sense that, you know, people can really see that there's things that would otherwise be hidden, like a UPS truck. I want it to sort of entertain. I want it to, it's not serious. I mean, the world is serious enough that, you know, it's just nice to create art that kind of is fun. I'm recognizing known places in our city, and I'm bringing it to this crazy, whimsical level. I think one of the reasons I paint in a style that I do is I really never could realistically draw. I couldn't make something look like a picture or a photograph. I would try and kind of fail miserably. I come from kind of a background of illustration, cartooning, and caricature. I think it was my junior year of college. I came across a guy that was drawing caricature portraits at the Minnesota Zoo. I kind of asked him what got him into that, and I kind of got into it that way. You know, as an illustration major, it was really nice to be able to apply my major in some way, even if it was just doing just live drawings of people, you know, for a couple dollars here and there. And then one thing led to another, and then canvas started to kind of get a little boring to me, and I kind of wanted to push the boundaries of different work surfaces. You know, the first thing that really I started kind of playing around with was plywood and painting on a plywood surface. It was kind of like I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue, but, you know, I just thought to myself, I kind of would love to see some sort of three-dimensionality to it, and how would I pull this off? If it's maybe a brick building, I'm working on using textures out of what I use is a pastry bag, and I take these gel medium textures and then sort of fill it into the pastry bag and kind of use it to, you know, almost draw on the wood. The texture has kind of the consistency of like cake frosting, so it's like frosting a cake. It took me a while to kind of learn the control of this stuff has a mind of its own. You know, it was just a lot of evolution of trying different things and pushing the scale element of it, making these paintings bigger and taking them on in something that maybe I hadn't tried before, to the point where I feel kind of uncomfortable about it. And that's for me, that's when good things start to happen. It's really weird for me how popular the art has become. I almost feel a little bit embarrassed by it. It's not something you plan a career to do. I think that people really are drawn to the work because it's the memory of a place that they have a fondness for. You know, something like Mancini's, like people that have this fondness for Mancini's, they see the facade and they see how it's all lit up, and they just make this connection to these memories. I'm looking for something that has this sort of fantastically unique feel about it. You know, I feel really lucky that I am recognized for this. I know there's artists that just, they're pounding the pavement to try to sell a piece of art, and they're doing whatever they can, and there's a lot of talent there. I feel really lucky that it has worked out in a relatively smooth way for me.
is the excuse to have this stuff around. I'd feel too insane just to have it to have it. This is the mother room, I'd call it. It's where I do all the heavy work as far as in here. I like to sit in here for hours and mess around with small things, and I mean everything from animal skulls to old dead flowers. Queen Anne legs are always a favorite of mine. Plus takes care of cat burglars if there's ever a problem. Sometimes you just have to play with stuff to get inspired for what you're going to do next. I find most of my things at thrift stores and yard sales and estate sales and occasionally an antique store if it's cheap. This is an old radio that I kind of gutted and put on top. This is another old clock down here. This piece in the back was from an old pinball machine. This is an old lens from an old camera. If it's a thrift store I go to regularly, I always walk the same pattern. If I haven't found anything there for a while, I always go in and I break my pattern. It's like, just makes me think that maybe I'll find something, unstick everything, go a different direction. Usually I'll head towards the furniture first, then the small shelves after that. I think this is some sort of sewing cabinet down here that I had gotten. It's in pretty rough shape, but I'll have to fix that up. There's a box inside here that I made a keyhole into. I might make a back door going through that and build some sort of a stage in there. Because a lot of these things are just a part of our culture that everyone's, I've so many times people have been like, oh, that was in my grandfather had one of those, or that was in my grandma's house on her wall, and people can always find something they can relate to. There's a whiskey bottle cabinet over here. There's a hidden drawer with aspirins. I think people just find their own thing pretty easily. I'm giving them like an attic for them to climb through or something, do their own digging. The trifada, the three women of fate are up in the back. You can see them if you look inside. One spins a yarn or rope, one measures the length, and one cuts it. The rope represents your life being created, measured out, and then cut. Cake knife for those special occasions. But I've had people drop things off too. I have a money box on one of the pieces out there. The first show I had, it was full of about $50 worth of change and a couple dollars. So I think I should start using that a little more, putting those on more pieces. My grandfather was an auctioneer for the county when I was a little kid. One of my first jobs was to go around with him to help at these auctions. They would take me up to the attic or some old sewing room and put me in front of a bunch of old drawers or boxes and tell me to go through them and sort of compile them into different categories, thimbles and coins. And it's just funny because I spend most of my summers going to auctions and yard sales and thrift stores, buying the objects that are pretty much similar to when I was a kid. Even when I was back and doing more paintings, and I started to incorporate little objects into the paint. And then I'd sort of paint the objects, but they would build and build until they started to overrun the painting. Basically, the sculpture aspect grew out of the paintings and then kind of wrapped itself around what was left of the painting, and they just became sculptures. To me, they're mini theaters, and I like to have them all sort of encompassed into one world. Lighting the piece from almost within inside itself or closer to the surface, so you get the actual shadows of the pieces a little more, and you can I think it gives more dimension instead of just having a direct light on top of something. It kind of pulls you in a little. Plus it has that carnival feel. I think it's a sense of bringing order to some part of my brain, because most of my life I felt like everything was pretty much out of order. It's a way to control situations and finite them into one thing. Things that are all over the place, I can bring them in and make them tight. It's like playing with blocks. Really cool blocks. So yeah, I don't know, I'm starting to like this.
Dust cloud coming off an old dirt road that leads up here to this little graveyard. 7 lights in a perfect row. Under each light is a police car. Just because you say it doesn't make it true. You can say that I'm guilty, man, I just don't care. You can burn my body black, just don't make me go back to Jackson Square. I met you on Decatur Street with your little bare feet and your violin. I was walking by with my guitar in my hand. You smiled at me and I jumped right in. Before I knew it, you were all I knew. Every moment together was an answered prayer. After a while, we had some money saved up and we rented a room over Jackson Square. One day, everything changed. Your eyes got strange, you didn't seem yourself. You'd go to tell a story and you'd start out fine. Halfway through it, you'd be somewhere else. And I started having the strangest dream. I held a string and looked up in the air. You were glowing with the strangest light, drifting out of sight over Jackson Square. Life is something that you can't control. When you try to hold on to it, it makes you let go. Things are not like they were before. I can hear her crying through the bathroom door. She says she hears spirits all around the room, and they're telling her things that make her feel scared. I've no idea what to do. We're both in over our heads on Jackson Square. Good God. I woke up with the weight on my chest. People were screaming on the street below. I reached for you, I was alone in the bed. Wind was blowing through an open window. And suddenly I was very old, in a little boat, absolutely nowhere. Staring at the side of the universe and your tiny body down on Jackson Square. And don't tell me that there ain't no end. There damn well is, and it waits in the wings. I see you kneeling there at center stage in your tiny cage made of angel wings. While I'm here every night, loading my gun and trying not to go there. Anyone who says that life is clear has never seen a mirror or been to Jackson Square. Yeah, yeah.
My favorite part of the process for sure is the creative part of the song, where you start out with nothing and then you're just open to whatever comes, and then by the end of the day or by the end of a couple days there's a created song that's there that wasn't there before. And then I love the part of recording too, you know, creating an actual recording of that.
On top of this crazy world, there's a perfect face, and I finally see it.
You know, that's the part that really draws me forward, because for me it's always the next song that is my favorite. I'm always working on, you know, like right now I'm working on a song, I'm working on it all morning, and I'm so excited about, you know, fleshing it out and having it come to fruition. It's a constantly interesting art form to me, and just feel really fortunate to be able to work in it as much as I do.
Minnesota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.